Omarham, everyone. On behalf of JVB London, I, Shubham Jain, would like to invite you all to this special session that we have on Sunday today with the title Dialogue Within Tradition. For that, we have our Varisht Shravika ji, Srimati Heena ji, to deliver the talk. So over to you, Heena ji.
Thank you so much. I'll start with Naukar Mantra first. Namo Arhantanam, Namo Namo, Namo Sitharam, Namo Namo, Namo Hariyanam, Namo Namo, Namo Vachayanam, Namo Namo, Namo Loe Savasahunam, Namo Loe Savasahunam, Eso Panchana Mokaro, Savapav Panasano, Mangalanancha Savesim, Padamam Havai Mangalam, Padamam Havai Mangalam. Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha. I bow down to the lotus feet of Lord Mahavir, Acharya Shri Ramanji, respected Samniji, dear sisters and brothers, good morning, Jai Jinendra and Om Arham. As you know, today's topic is dialogue with tradition, dialogue within tradition, and I have based this on Uttaragyan Sutra. Now, I would like to ask the question, what is Anekantvad? Can anybody have a go at it, please? Unmute yourself and you can tell me if you want to your thoughts on Anekantvad.
Participants can unmute themselves now, if they'd like to.
Right. Shall I just go ahead? I don't hear anybody, so.
Sure, please.
Okay. Right. So, the word Anekantvad, it is a compound of two Sanskrit words, which is Anekant and Vad. Anekant and Vad. The word Anekant itself is compound of three root words, that is An, Ek, Ant. So, it is so much clear, An, Ek, Ant. Okay, so An is not, Ek means one, and Ant means end or side. So together it signifies not one-ended or one-sided, many-sidedness or manifoldness. Now, the word Vad means doctrine, or the way we speak, the thesis and all that is called Vad. Thus, the term Anekantvad is translated by scholars as the doctrine of many-sidedness, non-one-sidedness, or many-pointedness. Okay, so the whole topic is based on this, Anekantvad. Truth is expressed in many ways. One cannot make definite statement about truth or existence. Each statement is true in its own limited sense. Seeing entity from all direction is Anekantvad. This is the very unique theory presented by Jains to the world. And today we are going to look at the ideal example of this theory of Anekantvad and its positive results. So now, the topic is based on Keshri Kumar Shraman and Indrabhuti Gautam. So let's know who who is Kesi Kumar Shraman and who is Indrapati Gautam. So there was a gap of 250 years between Parshvanath Bhagwan, our 23rd Tirthankar, and Lord Mahavir, who was our 24th Tirthankar. So there was a 250 years of gap between their religious order. Therefore, when Lord Mahavir's religious order started, the followers of Parshvanath Prabhu were still around, and Kesi Kumar Shraman was one of them. Parshvanath Prabhu's third successor was Acharya Samudra Suri, and in his time, Acharya called Videsi came to Ujjaini town, and with his preaching, Prince Kesi Swami and his parents got renounced. Since Kesi Swami was very young at the time when he renounced, that is why he was called Kesi Kumar. Yes, and he was highly scholar monk of Parshva Prabhu's Sasan. He was totally following the path of three jewels, that is Samyak Gyan, Darshan and Charitra. He had Mati Gyan, Shruti Gyan and Audi Gyan. Now who is Indrapati Gautam? As you all know, Indrapati Gautam was Lord Mahavir's first disciple, and he also had the four types of knowledge, which is Mati, Shruta, and Auti Gyan, and he was also very well. He knew all the agams as well. Yes. So this is the little introduction between two. The whole conversation is going to be between these two. Okay, so let's get into that. Now, how do they both meet? So this is how they both meet. As both were the followers of Jain religion, but belonging to different Tirthankars. Lord Mahavir was constantly traveling from one kingdom to other because people used to invite him to give sermons. Sometimes he would travel uninvited as well to stop wars and animal sacrifice and so on. At that time, some monks accompanied Lord, and some often traveled in small groups to spread his message into different areas. During one such voyage, a few monks and Gautam Swami arrived to Sravasti city and decided to stay at Kostak Gardens. So, you know, they always stay in the garden in those times, and it has to be the right place for them. That's how they chose to stay in this garden. That very same evening, Gautam Swami's colleagues discovered that Kesi Swami and his group were camped into Tinduk Garden. So it's just one city, but it has two gardens, and both are at the opposite ends. So both of the group are staying in the same town, but they are in a different gardens. Okay, and now what happens as the monks every day have to go for their gochri round and talk to each other, then they wondered, even though both the groups' ultimate goal was the same, then why is it a separate sung, which they didn't understand? So not only to find the answer for the same, but since they used to be the rare occasion for both the groups to be in the same town, Gautam Swami with his sung decided to visit Kesi Swami and his sung. Needless to say that Gautam Swami and Kesi Swami, both being such a scholar, they already knew the answers to this, but they wanted to clarify in front of the monks and all the Shravak and Shravikas. That is why they decided to meet up. Now, what does this prove? The greatness of the great people. This incident is the ideal example of generosity and right thinking at the right time. Leaving aside sectarian differences as well as clothes, both met up to compare their thoughts and synthesize is the ideal example of Anekantvad. So this is how they meet in the same town. Now, when they meet, this is what Kesi Swami decided to to call Gautam Swami to his place, and Gautam Swami goes there, and all the town people also come in and join. They thought that, thinking that there will be the debate between two acharyas, and wanted to see who will win. That was not the real case. Kesi Swami welcomed Gautam Swami, and he sung with warmth and respect and offered a great seat to Gautam Swami. Okay, and now, so as he invited, he is asking Gautam Swami the question. Normally, it is always the older monk who will ask the younger monk who will ask to the older monk. But in this case, Kesi Swami is asking the question to Gautam Swami. So what is the question he is asking? Parshva, so that is his, the one he belonged to, Parshva preached that a monk must observe 4 vows, namely Ahimsa, Satya, Achaurya, and Parigraha Pariman, that is non-violence, being truthful, non-stealing, minimizing needs and possession. But, so there were only 4. But Mahavir speaks of 5 vows, and the 5th being celibacy. Why do we have this difference if the final goal is the same? So this is the question Kesi Swami asked to Gautam Swami. So the Parshvanath Prabhu's, he preached 5 vows, whereas Bhagwan Mahavir preached, Parshvanath Bhagwan preached 4 vows, whereas Bhagwan Mahavir preached 5 vows. And that is why Parshvanath was called Chaturyam Dharma, whereas Bhagwan Mahavir was Panchamahavrati Dharma. Okay, so that was the difference. Now, why is it so? That is what Kesi Swami wanted to ask. Let's see what answer he gets. Gautam Swami explained, first Tirthankar's followers were ignorant but simple. From 2nd to 23rd Tirthankar's followers were simple but wise. 24th Tirthankar's followers are ignorant and perverted. Now, this is the main reason for the duality of doctrine. It was difficult for the ascetic disciples of the first Tirthankar to understand the code of conduct and in its pure form, whereas it is difficult for the ascetic disciple of the last Tirthankar to practice it in its pristine form. As you can see, both the word Jad is in the first and in the 24th Tirthankar, but they were saral, they were very simple, so they will like do whatever you tell them to do. They won't question, whereas we are all Jad and Vakra. We need, like, however, for those of 22 Tirthankar, it was easy both to understand and to practice. Thus, 4 ethical vows sufficed to guide for the ascetic followers until the last Tirthankar's time. For the last Tirthankar's ascetics, disciples are ignorant and perverted due to that they did not follow the rules of the monks easily. And even if they did, they always have doubts in everything. And for that, they would get trapped between right or wrong. They are smart but vulnerable. Due to the declining ethical standards of the society, hence, it is difficult for them to practice it in its pristine form. Therefore, they needed detailed clarification of their vows. Gautam Swami explained the philosophical basis of any tradition is. So this is the main thing Gautam Swami says. Understand this. Gautam Swami explained that the philosophical basis of any tradition is wisdom. Knowledge and ethics are the foundations of wisdom. Whereas knowledge is eternal and innate, ethical concepts change with time, place, and society. And Kesi Swami was really pleased with this answer. Now, Kesi Swami decides to ask another question. Whereas we, from Pasva's tradition, wear divine yellow robes, why have Mahavir's monks shunned old clothing? Again, Gautam Swami tries his best and gives this answer. Clothes do not help anyone in his sadhana and are of no real use. In reality, both Tirthankars have repeatedly said that rational vision, rational knowledge, and rational behavior, that is Samyak Gyan, Darshan, and Charitra, are the three jewels that pave the road to moksha. That foundation is common to both the tradition. For the first and last Tirthankar, for the monk, it was important to make some sort of rules, as we saw previously, that they both were jad, ignorant, whereas in the middle it was easy. They both they followed everything which was told to them, and they understood as well. It is through specialized knowledge, that is that it's called Vignan, special Vigyan, that the instruments of the knowledge of religion have been determined. Okay, so let's see which are the what does the Vignan says, what does that says, that knowledge, that why the sadhan has to be decided. Okay, so this is the reason. Now, Gautam Swami explains accessories are not only required for accessories are only required for three reasons: recognition by people, to live. So now let's have a look at recognition by people. What does he mean by that? So as sometimes some mean people, just to earn their fame, can pretend as sadhu and make people fool. In that case, the real sadhus suffer and do not get the proper attention. Now, the second reason, to live a monk life, especially during the rainy season. Now, this is very simple. In rainy season, some old sadhus or any tapasvi sadhu cannot go out for gochri. Therefore, young sadhus need their patras, means the vessels, where they take their food, to bring food as well as rajoharan for the jivdaya palan, and to look after the lives, yes, and clothes to look decent in public places, and is important especially for the nuns. Okay, so this is why it was chosen to. And the third one is for the ascetic, it is the constant awareness that I am an ascetic. Sometimes in the time of difficulty, sadhus may slip from their vows, but their dress will remind them to be in Sanyam. For the ascetics, it is the constant awareness that I am an ascetic is very important. Now, here I would just like to share an example, which is also from our Agam. It is about Prasan Chandra Rajarsi. As you all know, that Prasan Chandra Rajarsi renounced the worldly pleasures and left his kingdom to his son, who was still very young at the time, with the trust that trustworthy minister will guide his son. His meditation and he started meditating, and his meditation was really amazing. All the passers-by, as he was standing with the one, as you can see in the picture, how he stood while he was meditating. So it really impressed all the passers-by, and he not only stood like this, but he stood like that right in the sun when it is so hot, or when it was very chilling cold, he still remained the same. Now, one time Emperor Shrenik also was amazed. Some royal generals that followed Shrenik also praised him for his penance, but one jealous person, as usual, somebody has to be there, and his name was Darmuk, taunted like this. What did he say? While he's standing over here for a victory over his mind, on the other hand, his son has lost a war and his kingdom. The kingdom and his life are both at step. Now, this comment disturbed Prasenjit's meditation. He started feeling really annoyed about that trustworthy friend who he left with his son, and he started to think about the ways to rescue his son and fight the enemies himself. So, the monk, Prasenjit, was no longer the man in meditation, but a king on the battlefield. At this time, King Shrenik asked Bhagwan Mahavir that with this deep meditation, where would he be born if he passes away this very moment? And Bhagwan says, to the hell, just because at that moment Prasenjit was engaged in fighting the conspirators. While Prasenjit was fighting mentally against his conspirators, he very violently discharged his weapons one after another, and soon his weapons were exhausted. But the foes were not destroyed. As the last resort, he therefore thought to hit them with his heavy crown. But as the Muni's hand reached the head to get his crown, he touched his shaved head. That jolted his attention. He suddenly remembered that he has been initiated into the vow of equanimity and non-violence to all living beings. Prasenjit critically reviewed his serious lapse once again, concentrated on his quiet meditation, and started repenting for his offensive indulgence. Thus, while Prasenjit was going through the thought of revenge, Bhagwan said if he had died then, he would go to hell. But when he realized his lapse and repented, he acquired omniscience. Thus, from this example, we can see that to be in Munivesh, it helps them to realize that they have renounced the world and are on the path of monkhood, especially when they have difficulties to face. And you and me, everybody know that they go through a lot of difficulties. And so thus, the instruments are not the goal, but are important to achieve the goal. Yeah. Now, of course, K.C. Swami was very pleased with the answer. And again, he's asking another question. He's asking, Gandhar Gautam, life is an endless battle with thousands of enemies. Who are these enemies and how do we defeat them? Now, let's see how Gautam Swami answers this. Now, Gautam Swami explained the first four. As you can see in this diagram, the first four is one's own uncontrolled, unconquered soul or mind, whatever we call it. That's how we understand. And because of that unconquered mind, what do we have? Anger, greed, deceit, and ego. So Gautam Swami says, I just work at winning the first one only. Once I win that, I have already won anger, greed, deceit, and ego. So by winning one, I have won 5. Not only after winning 5, I controlled the senses because we always have uncontrolled senses. So touch, taste, smell, sight, and hearing. So by just controlling 1, I have controlled 5. And by controlling 5, I'm controlling 10. And this is how I have won all the foes. One is so this is what the answer is. Now, how do we do this? How do we win this? So the basic for us to understand is if we develop forgiveness instead of anger, if we develop humility instead of, if we develop contentment instead of greed, and if we develop honesty instead of deceit, if we develop humility instead of ego. Now, this doesn't come overnight, but the more and more we think about these the good virtues like the humility and all these, then automatically it, you know, like how when the sun doesn't chase darkness, but as soon as it spreads its light, then the darkness goes away. In the same way, if we develop humility, honesty, contentment, then all this will go away itself, right? So instead of fighting them, we have to concentrate onto the better ones. Yes, and that is how, that is what Gautam Swami answered. Now we go on to the next one. Kesi Swami continued asking the question: a poisonous plant grows in all our hearts and bears destructive fruits. How can one destroy this plant? Let's see what Gautam Swami has to say. Gautam Swami is saying, first of all, we have to understand what does he mean by poisonous plant is our urge to remain trapped in sansar, and the destructive fruits are repeated births and deaths. And what do we want to uproot this plant? Why sadhana can uproot the plant and liberate the soul. So this is how Gautam Swami explained. Eager desires of existence is the name of that trend rail. Our urge to remain trapped in this endless cycle of death and rebirth is the poisonous plant rooted in our heart. Repeated births and deaths are its destructive fruits. Sadhana, Samyak Darshan, Gyan, Charitra. Uproot that plant and liberate our soul. So basically, greed is the plant that grows and gives the fruit of anger, deceit, and ego. This keeps in the cycle of sansar. Now, to stop this plant of greed, grow and destroy, three jewels are the key to it. There are some very popular example that I would like to just, another one I would like to point out is the Kapil Muni, which is also there in our Agam. Or if you want to see the, want to know the opposite side, like all of us know the example of King Midas, but instead of going that, I would like to share this one as Kapil Muni, which is in our Agam. Now, Kapil Muni was son of a priest, and he used to hold the prime position his father used to hold the prime position in the kingdom of Prasenjit. Now, suddenly what happens that he dies, the father dies, and Kapil Muni was very young at that time. Now, when he dies, the father, because he was very young, somebody else takes that place of that priest in the king's kingdom. And one day the mother started crying, looking at that someone going with all that. And she started remembering her husband. She thought one day there was a time that he used to go with this pride into king's kingdom. And now look, because my son is so young and he doesn't know anything, if somebody else has taken the place, and this place will never come back to me. So now then the little boy sees this and he says, why are you crying? And she explains to him. Then he says, mother, look, you tell me, I will go and learn all what my father knew, and you tell me where I can go. The mother says, definitely not in this town, because people are very jealous, but I know your father's friend who can teach you everything, who is in another town. So he goes there and he's trying to learn everything what father knew. That friend of his father is agreed to teach him everything, but for his lodging and boarding, he had another place. Now, this Kapil Muni is staying somewhere else, and there there was this lady servant who was serving him every day the food and everything. So over the time, they both fell in love. And the lady said, now let's get married, but none of us have anything, so how can we get married? And then she only says that go to the king very early in the morning, and that king always gives a lot of gold to the person that who goes and says good morning to him, the very first person. So then this Kapil Muni, he just started going and he wanted to be there first. So instead of going early morning, he started like halfway in the night. He started going, and unfortunately, the king's men sees him, and they thought he was a thief, and they catch him and they bring him to the king. And then he was asked, why did you want to steal? And he says, I'm sorry, I did not want to steal, but just because we wanted to get settled down and we wanted to marry, that is why I wanted the first gift that you give every morning. And the king saw that he was very honest. And that's why the king says, look, ask for whatever you want. I give you the permission. Now, when he was asked to ask for anything, he told king, okay, give me some time. So he goes in the garden and he thinks to himself, what shall I get? What shall I get? And in his mind, it was like, okay, in our language, maybe £1,000 or £10,000 or £1,000,000. His mind kept on going and going. It didn't stop. And he thought to himself, however much I'm going to ask, I'm always going to think more, more, more. And suddenly his thoughts changes completely. Okay, look, this has no limit. It's not stopping. So then he comes back to the king and he says, I'm, I don't want anything. I have got what I wanted. And thus he does not ask anything from the king, and he just goes away himself and he does his sadhana and he achieves Keval Gyan eventually. Yeah. So this is what it is. This is always the greed. If we can try and control that slowly, then we can be there. We can cut that poisonous plant growing. Okay. So then we go on to the next one. So unfortunately, I cannot discuss all the questions that were asked by Keshi Swami just because of the time. I have just shared few that I thought was good, but in the end, Gautam Swami summarized all the answers with the best of his ability and the knowledge given to him by Mavi Swami. And I have summarized them like such as knowledge is eternal and does not change with time. It is an eternal achievement of the learned. However, our ever-changing conduct is subject to the influences and pressures of time, place, and popular culture. In a way, our conduct is shaped by the perceived norms of our society, while the same society is influenced and molded by our conduct. Social changes evolve from the interplay between human inspirations and behavioral norms of the society. Since knowledge does not change with time, the message of Bhagwan Parshvanath and Bhagwan Mahavir is the same both. What did they preach? To know the self is the ultimate goal of life. So this knowledge does not change. However, every society, every sangh, and every organization shapes its own ethical codes. Over the years, these codes change because of greater insights of laxity, carelessness, ego, and social pressure. Such change can rapidly take an individual or a society to unprecedented heights of or on a wrong and undesirable path to destruction. So, Mahavir's 5 vows and the path to reach Keval Gyan have developed gradually from this awareness. Following them is essential for the smooth and efficient operation of the Sangha. Next, sorry. So this is how I have summarized it. Now we can go. So I have just to summarize. I have just put the last slok of this chapter. It is the chapter number 23 in Uttarayadhyana Sutra. So it says, Kesi goyama o nityam tammi asi samagame suya sila mukkaso mahattata vinichyo. Now, what does it mean? In the continued meeting in exchanges of Kesi and Gautam in Tindu Garden, scripture, knowledge, and righteousness were brought to eminence, and many great doctrines were affirmed. Imagine. That is due to this meeting, making the right decision about the Mahavrats, truth, and fundamental principles that leads to moksha was achieved. What a great achievement, just by peaceful dialogue, deeper understanding of truth from many perspectives. Yes? Now, towards the end, with the amazing answers given by Gautam Swami, Kesi Swami says, Gautam, you are endowed with excellent wisdom. You have removed my doubt. O inequal, one ocean of scriptural knowledge, my salutations to you. So, Kesi Swami, even though elder to Gautam Swami, is giving his salutations and bows down to his head, bows down with his head to pay homage to Gautam Swami. He then accepted with heartfelt devotion Lord Mahavir's religion of 5 vows. Now, disciples in both the groups realized how close the true traditions were, in spite of the apparent differences in some rituals. The two groups decided to merge into single entity. Kesi Swami and all his 500 disciples were initiated with Bhagwan Mahavir. Now, just one more thing. Why does Kesi Swami and his disciples have to get initiated? Now, this is something that is in our Agam. Normally, when any Tirthankar establishes their Tirth, the monks from the previous Tirthankar have to enter, but there's no need to renounce again into new Tirth. That is, just accept the new Tirth and start following new Tirthankar. Then only they will achieve Keval Gyan. This is how the process works as per our Agam. The only difference here is all previous Tirthankar had Chaturyam Dharma, and they did not need to renounce again in new Tirthankar Sasan, but just accept it and follow it. Kesi Swami had to leave Chaturyam Dharma and renounce into Mahavir's 5-fold Dharma. Okay, so this is a little technical bit that I thought I'll share with you. Now, to achieve this, I just thought we can summarize the good qualities, the super personality of both of the followers. As let's look at Swami Kesi was the embodiment of the Shraman doctrine of Anekantvad. For him, dissenting opinion is not an obstacle, but an opportunity to learn more about absolute truths. So he was well focused on goal rather than instruments. Now he had a simple intellectual and honest focus on the unity of two traditions for the betterment of the Shraman path. That is egoless. He was egoless. Although he was a senior in an ancient tradition and had 500 disciples, as we saw, yet he welcomed Gautam Swami, listened to him with respect, and honored them by telling his disciples to join Mahavir Prabhu's egoless. So he was totally egoless. Yeah. So as I said, I have not discussed all the questions which were asked, but just to summarize, I thought these were the good personality of Kesi Swami as well as Gautam Swami. So Gautam Swami was very intelligent and very capable of answering from the right perspective. He was endowed with excellent wisdom, also polite and respectful, even though being such a learned person, very far-sighted thinking his was. Yeah. So with these qualities have helped both to reach the very important aspects in Shraman tradition. It is about time that we all have to hope that the monk and indeed the entire fourfold Arhat Sangh understand the importance of unity and do what is best for the Shraman community. Let us all hope and pray we all can apply Anekantvad in our routine life and iron out the differences and find the best out of it. So, which makes our life so much easier. Now, I would just like to end my talk here. And if anybody have any questions, I will try my best to answer whatever I can. Thank you all so much for listening to me.
Omarham, now everyone can unmute themselves and ask the questions that they may have. Hina ji, I have a question if I may ask.
Definitely.
So not completely related to the talk that you have made, and please feel free if you think the question is irrelevant out of my ignorance. But yeah, my question would be, what is more important according to Jainism? Is it Gyan or is it Dhyan? So I mean, if I were to, as an individual, if I have to spend my time and energy, what should, and maybe there may be different preference depending on different personalities, but is there any obvious superiority among the two, that okay, if you do dhyan, you will get gyan automatically, or vice versa?
Okay. So from my point of view, I would say they both go hand in hand. Um, as you know, only the knowledge doesn't take us anywhere. So even though if we have little knowledge, if we contemplate on it, so that is dhyan. So in everywhere in our agam, everywhere you see that that is how it has been prescribed. That okay, you learn little bit, then you contemplate on it. Yes, and then you try to practice in our day-to-day routine lives. So I would say Gyan and Dhyan goes hand in hand. We have to have both. Because when you do the meditation, you contemplate, you really try to understand it, and don't forget, whole our soul is same as Bhagwan Mahavir, but just that we have so much dust over it that we cannot see our pure soul. So the more contemplation, more of dhyan on something, then it will brighten up more and more. It's just like cleaning the mirror, isn't it? The mirror is so dirty. You try to clean it, and you can see the reality. So Gyan and Dhyan, from my point of view, they go hand in hand. You have to have both.
Lovely, thank you.
I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I noticed Samiji is also apparently online. Samiji, would you like to add anything to the topic?
Okay. Thank you.
Omaram, Hinabe, thank you.
Vandami Namaswami Samiji.
Thank you so much for this like deep lecture. And yes, when the dialogue between tradition is very, very important, you know, tradition of Tirthankara is belong to Jainism. And at that time, there was no name of Jainism. And it was the Arhat Dharma or Nirgranth Dharma, and there was no so much communications in between. So it is really a important documentation that there is something we can found. Otherwise, between one Tirthankar to the other Tirthankar, the gap was huge, and it is only the short gap of some 100 years, three and something. So this is really a great interesting and might be if it could be explored more through the different sources of different religious traditions, then it can reveal. But we are lucky that the last sermon of Bhagavan Mahavir has compiled by Gandharaj, and there we find in the Uttaradan Sutra this dialogue within the tradition. So really it is important, and many more. Yeah, people like you, if you dig more, you can do 3 4 lectures in a series, dialogue within the tradition. So thank you, Hina Bain. And Hina did his master's, her master's degree from Jain Vishwabharati University, and she is a seeker and regular meditation practitioner, as well as regular swadhyay and holding swadhyay in different areas of London and delivering lecture. And she is also a Jain Sanskar Vidhi Karak at JVB. So several times last year and this year, when some baby born, she did naming ceremonies, housewarming ceremonies, and other ceremonies with Jain Sanskar Vidhi. So Heena is one of the Jain Sanskar Vidhikarak of the JVB and Swadhyay of JVB. Om Aramina Bin.
Thank you very much, Samniji. And it's all your teaching, I would say. So,
And
yeah, I thank you for it.
one more thing I would like to add to Subham's question. It was really a brilliant question. Gyan and Dhyan is the same stream of our consciousness. So Acharya defined Chalam Chittam Jnanam, where there is movement in the modes, that consciousness is knowledge. Sthiram Chittam Jhanam, when the modes are stable or stabilized, that mode of consciousness is meditation. So Gyan and Dhyan are the part of same consciousness, like same water. When you refrigerate it, it is an ice cube. Or when you use water in a glass of water, then that is flowing water. So water is water. So Gyan and Dhyan are two part of the same consciousness of our Atma. Om Arham.
Thank you very much. That was really good, Samniji. Yeah.
Swami Samiji. Thanks for that answer.
Mangal Path. Chattari Mangalam, Arhanta Mangalam, Siddha Mangalam, Sahu Mangalam, Kevali Panatto Dhammo Mangalam, Chattari Loguttama, Arhanta Loguttama, Siddha Loguttama, Sahu Loguttama, Kevali Panatto Dhammo Loguttamo, चत्तारि शरणं पवज्जामि अरहन्ते शरणं पवज्जामि सिद्धे शरणं पवज्जामि साहु शरणं पवज्जामि केवलिपन्नतं धम्मं शरणं पवज्जामि ये चार शरणा सगा और सगो न कोई जी भव्य प्राणी आदरे अक्षय अमर पद होय अक्षय अमर पद होय। ओम अरहम।
कृतज्ञोस्मि, हम सब आपके आभारी है। कृतज्ञोस्मि, हम सब आपके आभारी है। कृतज्ञोस्मि, हम सब आपके आभारी है। वंदामि नमस्सामि सम्मीची।
ओम
कृतज्ञोस्मि, हम सब आपके आभारी है। वंदामि नमस्सामि सम्मी जी।
हाँ ओम अरहम ओम।